The film Ang Pagbabalik, Daniel, 1998, opens with silence. The kind of silence that carries the weight of loss, exile, and unspoken regret. A small fishing boat glides through foggy waters, its lone passenger sitting still, his eyes fixed on the horizon. That man is Daniel, played by Fernando Poe Jr., known to millions simply as the King. His return is not triumphant, it's haunting. For years, Daniel has lived in hiding, a ghost of his former self. The movie never fully reveals what drove him away at first, only fragments of memory. A gunshot, a burning home, a betrayal. These images flicker in his mind like wounds that never healed. As the boat reaches the shore, Daniel steps onto the soil of his hometown for the first time in over a decade. The camera pans slowly, vast rice fields stretch endlessly, but the peace is deceptive. This land, once fertile and full of promise, is now controlled by the cruel hand of a corrupt military colonel and his wealthy allies. The return of a forgotten hero. Daniel walks to the marketplace. Vendors whisper his name in disbelief, "Si Daniel Yona." They remember him as the man who once stood against injustice, the man who vanished after a massacre that no one dared to talk about. FPJ plays this moment with quiet dignity. His expression says everything: guilt, longing, and the slow awakening of purpose. The film's cinematography uses long shots and low angles, making him look both weary and larger than life. He visits the small chapel at the edge of the village. The priest, an old friend, recognizes him instantly. Their reunion is brief but loaded with unspoken emotion. "Daniel," the priest says softly, "not all who fall remain buried." That line becomes the movie's emotional anchor. It's not just Daniel's story, it's the story of anyone who once believed in justice and lost faith. The broken town. Through Daniel's eyes, we see how far the town has fallen. Farmers are evicted from their land. The people live in fear. Soldiers patrol the streets, not as protectors, but as oppressors. Colonel Mendez controls everything: the land, the police, and even the flow of rice and food. Those who resist mysteriously disappear. Mendez's men collect protection fees, and those who can't pay are punished. One family, the Santos, stands as a symbol of the people suffering. They knew Daniel before his exile. Now their eldest son has joined the colonel's private army. A painful reminder of how corruption breaks families. The movie's writing is sharp here. The script, penned by veteran writer Tony Mortel, captures the everyday helplessness of Filipinos living under systemic injustice. FPJ's Daniel watches silently, the weight of every injustice pressing on him. Awakening. One night, Daniel witnesses soldiers beating a young man for stealing a sack of rice. He intervenes instinctively, disarming the men in seconds. The camera captures the raw power FPJ was known for: precise, powerful, and graceful. But after the fight, he's not proud. Instead, he kneels beside the beaten youth and says, "Violence feeds on itself. Don't let it eat your soul." This scene marks the turning point. Daniel realizes he can no longer stay silent. His return is no longer about redemption, it's about restoration. The next morning, word spreads that Daniel fought back. The villagers begin to whisper hope again. A system of fear. Colonel Mendez hears about Daniel's return and sees it as a threat. He orders his men to find him before he becomes a symbol. That line underscores the movie's central idea. In corrupt systems, the greatest fear of tyrants is not rebellion, but inspiration. Daniel becomes the target of harassment. His small house is searched, his friends are interrogated, and a bounty is quietly placed on his head. But Daniel does not run. He visits the homes of those he once helped and reminds them of who they were: brave people who once stood for something. He begins to organize them again, not as soldiers, but as citizens reclaiming their dignity. In one powerful sequence, Daniel helps the farmers rebuild their irrigation system after it's destroyed by Mendez's men. The montage, set against swelling orchestral music, is one of FPJ's most inspiring sequences. The message is clear. Rebuilding is also a form of resistance. The shadow of the past. As Daniel's influence grows, so does the mystery of his past. We begin to learn through flashbacks what really happened years ago. He was once a respected officer who exposed a smuggling operation within the military. But when he refused to be silenced, his superiors framed him for murder. The system he served turned on him, and those he trusted betrayed him. The tragedy culminated in the death of his younger brother, shot by the very men Daniel once commanded. This loss became the burden he carried into exile. Now returning to his hometown, Daniel faces the ghosts of that betrayal. Elena, the voice of conscience. Enter Elena, played by a strong, grounded actress who embodies quiet courage. She's a teacher and community organizer, and she represents the people's conscience. Her first meeting with Daniel is tense. She accuses him of abandoning them when they needed him the most. Daniel's eyes tell 1,000 words, pain, guilt, but also understanding. Over time, Elena becomes Daniel's moral compass. She challenges him to fight not for revenge, but for justice. You can't fix the past, but you can save what's left of us. Their relationship is not romantic in a typical sense. It's spiritual, two souls bound by duty. Elena's strength helps Daniel remember why he once believed in goodness. Building a movement. The film transitions into a story of unity and resistance. Daniel and Elena begin organizing the townspeople, farmers, fishermen, and even former soldiers tired of serving the corrupt. Using strategy and discipline, Daniel trains them not as killers, but as defenders. A gun without a cause is just another weapon, but in the hands of the just, it becomes the voice of the voiceless. FPJ's direction here is deeply symbolic. He portrays the idea that real power comes from solidarity, not fear. The movie uses wide, sweeping shots of people working together, repairing fields, protecting their land, and teaching children. These moments, though simple, are emotionally powerful. They show that Daniel's return is not about a single man's heroism, but about awakening a collective spirit. Colonel Mendez's retaliation. But with every spark of hope comes retaliation. Colonel Mendez, humiliated by Daniel's resurgence, launches a campaign of terror. He arrests innocent villagers and burns their crops. He spreads lies through the local radio, branding Daniel a rebel and murderer. The government turns a blind eye. In one chilling scene, Daniel stands on a hill watching the smoke rise from the village. The sunset paints his face red, a symbol of both anger and determination. He says quietly, "They've taken everything, except our courage." It's one of the most iconic lines in the film, later quoted in news articles, fan posters, and interviews. One reviewer wrote, "It's not the bullets that move us, but the silence between them." Production background. Behind the camera, Ang Pagbabalik Daniel was a labor of love for FPJ. Shot in remote areas of Bataan and Tarlac, production crews faced real storms, mudslides, and even political tension during filming. FPJ was not just the star, he was also the producer and unofficially the co-director. Many scenes were filmed with his signature one-take style, relying on authentic emotion rather than elaborate choreography. The fight sequences were practical and grounded. No exaggerated slow motion, no stylized blood. FPJ wanted realism. He told his crew, "A punch must tell a story, not just hurt." The movie's budget was modest by Hollywood standards, but FPJ's efficiency and experience turned it into a cinematic gem. The final runtime of 2 hours and 12 minutes balanced tension, introspection, and heart. Critical reception. When Ang Pagbabalik Daniel premiered in 1998, critics praised its emotional depth and social realism. While some expected another typical action film, they instead found a mature, almost poetic reflection on justice and redemption. Ratings. IMDb-style audience rating, 4 stars out of 5. Local film critics gave it an average of 4.5 stars, calling it FPJ's most heartfelt film of the decade. One reviewer wrote, "It's not the bullets that move us, but the silence between them." End of part 1. As part 1 concludes, Daniel's quiet rebellion begins to ripple through the countryside. The people whisper his name once again, not as a ghost from the past, but as a living symbol of hope. Colonel Mendez intensifies his hunt, promising to bring Daniel back, dead or alive. The final scene of part 1 is haunting and cinematic. Daniel standing alone in the rain, gripping a shovel as he buries an innocent man killed by Mendez's forces. The camera slowly zooms in on his face. The look in his eyes says it all. The time for silence is over. The man who returned to escape his past will now face it head-on. Fade to black.
The film opens with a somber tone. Daniel, now reunited with a few loyal friends, hides in a remote barrio surrounded by rice fields and mountains, a place that mirrors his soul, wounded but alive. The people whisper his name like a legend. Mothers warn their children not to follow the path of revenge, yet their eyes gleam with respect when they speak of him, the man who stood up against corruption when no one else dared. Meanwhile, the villains of the story, the same men who destroyed Daniel's family, are growing restless. Their power, once untouchable, is starting to crack under the pressure of Daniel's silent war. Senator Alcaraz, the cunning mastermind behind the political crimes, sends a private army to finish the job once and for all. In these quieter scenes, FPJ's performance is magnetic. You can see the inner conflict in his eyes. He's torn between vengeance and the moral code he grew up with. He's not a cold killer. He's a man haunted by memories of his wife and son, reminders of everything he lost. A key emotional sequence shows Daniel praying in a candlelit chapel. His rough hands tremble as he whispers to God, "Kung ito ang daan na itinagdamo, sana patawarin mo ako. If this is the path you've chosen for me, may you forgive me." This scene marks the turning point of the film. Daniel accepts that his fight is no longer just personal, it's a battle for the people forgotten by justice. A city drowning in fear. The second act shifts to the city, the stronghold of the corrupt. The film's cinematography takes a darker tone. Neon lights reflect off rain-soaked streets, symbolizing both the greed and decay of those in power. Daniel infiltrates the city under a false identity. Using his experience from the underworld, he begins dismantling the system piece by piece, taking out key allies of the senator, exposing scandals through recorded tapes, and rallying the oppressed workers who have suffered for years. The tension builds through an expertly choreographed sequence where Daniel and his allies hijack a convoy of the senator's men transporting weapons. The shootout that follows is classic FPJ, gritty, intense, and emotionally charged. The editing balances action with emotion, never losing sight of Daniel's purpose. Every bullet fired feels personal. Every punch thrown is filled with pain and memory. When the dust settles, Daniel stands tall amid wreckage, not as a criminal, but as a soldier of justice. The betrayal and the awakening. No great hero's story is complete without betrayal. One of Daniel's trusted men, lured by money and promises of power, sells his location to the enemies. The betrayal leads to one of the most dramatic scenes of the movie. Daniel's hideout is ambushed at night, lit only by the orange glow of burning huts. FPJ's direction shines in this sequence. The silence between gunfire and the look of realization on Daniel's face say more than words could. He loses several close friends, including a mentor figure who once saved him from despair. As Daniel kneels beside his fallen comrade, he utters, "Hindi ako susuko, hanggat may humihinga sa mundong ito na ginagasa ng kasamaan, lalaban ako." I will not surrender. As long as evil breathes in this world, I will fight. This marks the rebirth of Daniel, not just as a man of vengeance, but as the voice of the voiceless. The final battle. The climax of Ang Pagbabalik, Daniel, is everything FPJ film promises: emotion, honor, and explosive action. The showdown happens inside the senator's grand estate, a place built on blood money. Daniel storms the fortress with nothing but courage, a gun, and his unshakable will. The choreography of the final battle pays homage to FPJ's signature style, practical stunts, intense hand-to-hand combat, and the unmistakable slow-motion sequences that highlight his raw heroism. The senator, cornered and desperate, tries to buy Daniel off, offering him wealth and pardon. But Daniel's response pierces through the noise. Hindi lahat ng tao na bibili, may iba na mas pinipiling mamatay kaysa mabuhay na duwag. Not everyone can be bought. Some would rather die than live as cowards. Their confrontation ends not with triumphal celebration, but solemn justice, a final bullet, not fired in rage, but in acceptance. As dawn breaks, Daniel walks away from the burning mansion, his silhouette framed by the rising sun. The camera lingers, symbolizing rebirth. The man who once lost everything has found peace through sacrifice. Themes and legacy. Ang Pagbabalik, Daniel is more than a revenge film. It's a reflection of Filipino resilience, moral strength, and compassion even in the face of tragedy. FPJ embodies the archetype of the reluctant hero, a man who doesn't seek glory, but is destined for greatness because of his unwavering sense of justice. Behind the scenes, FPJ personally supervised much of the film's choreography and story development. The movie's success came from his deep understanding of the Filipino audience, people who crave not just action, but meaning behind the struggle. The film was praised for its emotional depth and powerful social commentary. It reminded audiences that corruption and oppression are not just political issues, but moral diseases that eat away at the soul of society. Reception and awards. Upon release in 1998, Ang Pagbabalik, Daniel was a commercial and critical success. It earned millions at the box office and won multiple awards for Best Actor, FPJ, and Best Director. Critics commended its blend of action and moral storytelling, a hallmark of FPJ's legacy. Audiences left theaters inspired, many calling it one of FPJ's most mature performances. Even decades later, the film remains a cultural touchstone, a reminder that the Filipino spirit, no matter how bruised, always stands back up.